Welcome back, everybody, to Let the Journey Begin. I am your co-host, Hilary Roberts, alongside my co-host, Jason Waller.
What's up, Hill?
Hey, Jay.
So good to see you.
You know, you too.
I know you had a week. You had a week.
I did. It was like 3 days of, going through some stuff. As you guys knew, my stepdad had fallen before our last week's episode, and he had broken his nose, fractured his face. The same day that my boyfriend and I were beginning to cohabitate, he was moving in, and then 2 days later, I had the bright idea that I reserved a puppy for him a few weeks ago, and just
right.
And I just think feeling powerless over with my stepdad. He's got Alzheimer's, and just watching my mom hurt and feeling frustrated about decisions that really, and just remembering that God's in charge. And I don't know, a lot of stuff just came to a head, and I just needed to, I wasn't sleeping well. I was really exhausted, and which never helps my mood. And I just needed to cry it out, man. I was just like several days of just crying it out, and not, I was angry before that for a couple of days, angry about some stuff. And then it just finally surrendered, and I just felt the powerlessness. And I don't go through that stuff too often. I mean, I live a life of yay, as you know, but in what I've been taught is about saving my rear end, not my face. The way that I stay sober is that I just have to be transparent. And I dove more into my support system. I dove more into making phone calls, going to groups, talking to girls that I help, reaching out to my mentors, my accountability people. And that's what I did, because I just, I know that I'm not, for me, I never want to lose the time I have. My greatest goal on this planet is to keep May 9th, 1997 as my sobriety date. And I was in and out. And I've seen people with 10, 20, 30, 40 years go back out. And I think
it's really important for our listeners to hear is, it doesn't matter if you got 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, 20 years of sobriety, that it's imperative to still work a program. And that's like, it's amazing on this side to see Hilary, be so open and vulnerable after having double digits of sobriety to be able to break down just like it was back in the beginning. And it's okay, because she's doing what she needs to do to get back into a place of getting back on and on track. And, we have those things that can set us off, but she didn't pick up a drink or a drug. And I just think it's really important to hear that, because so many times people are like, oh God, how'd you get that much time? It's because you keep doing those things that are working for you and you're excelling. So kudos to that.
And let me just say this for anybody that doesn't have a lot of time. You establish that foundation, okay? You're building, you may go down a bit, but then you do take the tools and then you're elevated more. And that's why we go back to the simple things that were taught in the beginning. And the thing is I didn't want to commit suicide, and I didn't want to drink. I didn't want to go act out in certain ways that I used to. And all I did is I didn't like feeling it, but I can't rise. I'm never going to rise above being human, but I knew to double up on my stuff. And guess what? I got out of
100%.
It. It was a thing. And so here we are, and I'm happy as a lark.
There we go. Well, boom. Well, we have a special guest, Hill. Do you want to, let's switch gears here and let's bring on our special guest and hammer home.
This week, we are joined by Pamela Thomas, Clinical Director of Oakvine Recovery Center in Austin, Texas. Pamela has over 27 years of experience in health and human services, working with individuals throughout the state of Texas. She is also a United States Air Force wartime veteran with a Distinguished Service Medal, along with several other military honors. Pamm is a master's level LCDC addiction advanced practitioner and certified clinical supervisor, in addition to the handful of degrees she has earned along the way, including a master's in human service administration and her current work earning a PhD in clinical psychology. Pamm, we are so honored to have you here with us today.
Damn, girl. How you doing?
Hello, Pamm.
How you doing, Hilary? Hey,
Girl,
Jason.
this is a double episode. Wink, wink, JJ.
Yeah, this is, I mean, God, you have gone through and accomplished a lot. We're so grateful to have you here. So thank you so much for joining us.
Sure. Thank you.
Of course. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. I am doing fine. It's a pretty good day out here in Texas, but I think the icing on the cake today is being able to chat with you two guys.
We love it. We love it. Well, obviously after, connecting with you, I met you face to face about 3-4 weeks ago out in Austin and seeing what you guys do. I was just so blown away by the work that you do and to hear all these accomplishments that you have and actually see them put to fruition and come to fruition it's been phenomenal. So, I mean, you're somebody that is a leader in the space, somebody that is so well-versed and well-educated. And I'm excited to learn more about you. But what I really want to know first of all is, what did you want to be when you grew up?
It's really funny that you say that. All I knew, I just wanted to help people. I didn't know what that looked like when I was younger. I couldn't formulate it. I just knew that I wanted to tell people something. And I didn't find that the clinical piece was going to be my piece until about 8 or 9 years ago.
Wow.
Fair enough. So is there anything that brought that aware? I mean, I know you said, it's just, you didn't know what it was, but you did want to help people. There wasn't a moment though where you're like, God, there was such a benefit of giving back, or, I mean, there wasn't an aha moment?
Actually, it wasn't, because what I told people was that I'm worried about others, but I didn't know what to do with it. And and it's funny you asked that question, because I just recalled it. People said, "What, Pam?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'm just worried about humankind or mankind." And that was my only response for years. So I thought going into human services and different areas was the answer. But it was only when I fully became a therapist that I found my zen, or my calling, if you would.
Right. Fair enough. So let's go back though, because getting there was potentially a rocky road, correct?
Oh yeah. Yes.
Well,
yes.
Let's take us back to the beginning.
Well, growing up in a home where there was alcohol addiction was pretty tough. And so having a caregiver that had an addiction and not understanding that they had an addiction. And back then it was like, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. And what people didn't understand then was, suppose you didn't have any treads on your boots, or there were no shoestrings in those boots. And so people really didn't have options. It was to go dark by being isolated and quiet and walk around with a lot of shame. So that's what we saw in addiction. Leaving home and joining the military, it was acceptable to drink. They had no programs for recovery. If you drank too much, you're not strong enough. You're not a soldier. So if you're not a strong soldier, you got to go. So then again, there's the isolation piece and the shame and the guilt piece. So
real quick, did you start drinking prior to going into the military? So you started drinking in the military?
Actually, I started smoking marijuana and drinking as a teen. It got worse in the military because it was so available.
Right.
How did your drinking progress?
Okay, that's a very good question. Yeah. Because in the military, every Friday, the unit shut down and everybody went to the bar. It wasn't one person that went. We went as a whole command, 30, 40 people. And so that was the culture, the social norm. And so there was never a problem. Back then, you could smoke a cigarette in your office. So these were those kind of times. So it wasn't anything that was wrong with it. It was just that you got drunk.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, at that time, it was a different time, and we didn't have nearly the education or the knowledge that we do around addiction today.
Exactly.
But we all understand that even back then, still the disease is primary, chronic, and progressive, right? So I'm dying to know how you were able to maintain, sustain, and actually achieve all these awards and accolades.
Well, a lot of isolation and keeping my addiction very quiet. And it was only when I became pregnant with my first child, and I was drinking. And I had a very good friend tell me that it was hurting their feelings or making it, they were very concerned that I was drinking while pregnant. And I had immediately stopped. I actually had a party at my house, and they were very cautious about how they approached me.
Yeah.
But I immediately received it.
That's wow.
How,
and I mean,
how
to be able
long
to stop
ago
on
was
your
that?
own.
That would be about 34 years ago.
Okay. Was that your last drink?
It was my last drink.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Right on.
It was
That
my
is
last drink.
Incredible.
That was a sobering moment.
What did you think when they said that to you? You're like, this is a problem and I need to stop.
I thought about it. I stopped immediately, but the shame of it, and it was more shame than guilt, because it wasn't okay. And knowing that I had a parent who drank when I was still in their stomach. So that was the sobering moment because of the challenges that I had to have with that parent. And I didn't want my daughter to go through that.
So what were the steps that you took though? I mean, obviously, so I mean, you were hit with this, this big information. And I mean, it was a very sobering moment, but it's one thing to be able to process that, but what were the action steps that you took?
Well, to be honest with you, back then, it wasn't a level of support groups or spiritual mentors back then or anything like that. I would almost have to say like just stopping. The process was really hard because I had to stay away from my friends who partied. So that was the thing. I couldn't hang around them anymore. So the great excuse was my daughter. But it was just very hard not to. And back then I was married to my spouse, which had an addiction, and he died in his addiction, actually.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So it was the both of us. But for some reason, my higher power came to my rescue. So it was challenging. I could say that because I couldn't go to the parties anymore, because I really didn't want to, because of the responsibilities I had as a parent then.
Yeah.
Well, as they say, right, you got to change, people, places, and things. So was that how much
That's
longer
right.
did you end up staying in the military after the pregnancy? Did you have to change that environment, or were you still enmeshed in that for quite some time?
It is interesting that you say that. I did get an honorable discharge, my choice, because of that. So not too long after that, maybe 6 years or so, somewhere in there. And that was a process as well, because it was a lot of self-discovery.
Right.
And then a lot of challenges with that then spouse who actually had a dishonorable discharge because of the drinking.
Well, God was doing for you what you couldn't do for yourself, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So you entered into, again, just so to recap this portion of what we've talked about, you entered at, let's say, early teens, that you started playing with marijuana, having some drinks.
Yeah.
And then it progressed into when you got into the military, and then you were in there and things really started to excel, isolation, depression, all those types of things started to manifest, and you get pregnant. So how long were you in the military total?
Oh, about 12 years. About 12 years.
Wow.
Where were you based?
A lot of places overseas and a couple places stateside. It was a great opportunity. I would say that. I think
Well, I want to say
did its job.
thank
Yeah,
you
thank you
very
for your
much for your
service.
service. Yeah. Yeah. No,
All
thank you
together
very
now.
much for your service. That's
welcome.
incredible. So did you enter into the military though at what, 17? 18?
Boy, you are good. I was the ripe old age of 17.
Okay.
Yes, I was. Yes.
So, I mean, but just for us and the listeners, I mean, that was basically a 11-year battle with addiction, right? I mean, if you're in there for
Yes.
12 years,
Wow.
I mean,
It
even
really
actually longer,
was.
13 or 14 years, because prior to not really understanding that you had an addiction, but then going through all that and being in that state of mind to come out on the other end. Wow, that is
Yes.
incredible. So you ended up having that aha moment, awakening moment. What is, so walk us through from a 50,000 foot view, what it looked like that first few years. I mean, for you're pregnant, you're about to have a child, you've changed your people, places, and things, and show us kind of the trajectory and the road that you went on to achieve recovery and the life that you're able to have today.
And to piggyback on that question, also as a single mother, like when did your husband pass away, and how did that affect your daughter and being there for her? So
Okay. So, in retrospect, the initial challenges were great because there's a lot of physiological challenges that you have to go through when you stop drinking. It's the mental work that you have to go through because now having a level of stress, I had to do something with that. And so, I guess dry drunk, it was hard to approach me, how I saw things. And then you have to factor in, if you're growing up in a home where there was a caregiver who had an addiction as well, those dynamics roll with you in your future. So a lot of breaking of good relationships because sometimes you're in a funky space. So most times it wasn't those relationships, but myself. So breaking good friendships and bad friendships, and where you couldn't discern the differences. And so that was a part of the journey. And then having to not understand that the spouse that was in a home with you that was still drinking and then escalated to using a lot of drugs, then that factored into where there was not a lot of stability in the home. And so with that being said, 2 other children came along. So, and my children are in their 30s. So my point is that there was a lot of emotional and financial instability. And so just as a note, as far as the military is concerned, you cannot even act like you're surrendering or even act like you're weak. So to keep that face on was very imperative in the military, no matter what. And so, and that is why you have a lot of veterans with challenges, because if they say they're having a problem, that's a statement of weakness, and they can't say that they have a problem. And so these things transition when you're a civilian. So you don't tell people about the problems that you're having with your marriage or your finances and stuff, because that means you're weak. And you talked about that 50-foot or 50,000 mile view of it. It can be very challenging for anyone making that transition, because now you have to come to terms with there is something that's out of your control. And now you need help. And your spiritual higher power, God, you have to really lean in and seek that thing out. For myself, it was like I stayed in it because the spouse that had the addiction, he died. He died in his addiction. It was pretty bad. It was really tough on the kids, but it was almost like it never left the home, my point, because you still had the challenges of the addiction while half the addiction wasn't there. And then it affects the children.
Correct.
So, yeah.
So when did you, it's so crazy to hear all this, come to light. But when was the point though? I mean, because the dry drunk, I think is very relatable. And that's what's amazing about today and the amount of exposure we have around addiction and recovery. There's a lot of resources. There's a lot of places to turn to. Did you ever find yourself entering into some form of program? Or, I mean, how did that dry drunkenness change and transition into a program of recovery? Because again, there's a big difference between staying abstinence of drugs and alcohol versus living a life in recovery. Because again, you just remove the drink or the drug, then again, you're still stuck with self, which is ultimately the issue, right? So can you share with us how you went through that process?
Well, thank you for that. I did a lot of counseling. That's what was supportive for me. Back then, there weren't recovery programs. So with that being said, I had to really lean on the higher power and the counseling for my support.
Got it. No, and I think that's one of the reasons why we love doing this podcast in general is obviously to hear, the trials and tribulations that people went through and how they, defeated those and they were living a prosperous life, but also how people got there, because there's so many people that go through different types of programs, different, whatever it may be, whether it's a 12-step type of thing, whether it's a spiritual type of thing, counseling, whether it's whatever facet it may be. So it's important to hear that, and it's incredible to see how it's worked for you. I mean, we're here 37 years later and doing a deep dive into that. Do you think one of the biggest contributions to that though was through through just being completely open and honest? Was it just talking things out? What were some of the benefactors that you received from that?
I think both of those, just being open and honest about where I am and what my needs are. But the talking it through, I believe, was very helpful for me because I could hear myself talk out loud. And some of the things that I did hear myself say is that I wanted more and I could not get it where I was currently at. Mm-hmm. So it had to be an internal change. So I would say it really wasn't about willpower at that time, but my willingness to be open, because willingness comes before willpower, for sure.
100%.
So I have a question. You were sober a while, and then I believe you were going to say that you started with the support groups.
Yes.
And how long were you sober when you did that? Because it's usually not in that order. A few people I've known have done it that way. So
I would say maybe 5 or 6 years, because remember the isolation piece and the shame piece were great factors in me waiting. Yeah. Because everyone else was perfect except me, because I had the problem and no one else on the planet had a problem except me.
That's the great lie.
Yes. 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 Yes.
It's the only disease that tells us we don't have a disease, right?
There you go. And everything's perfect and fine. So, and why would I want to let that one out?
Yeah, no, and I think it's so fascinating to hear. I mean, especially for a lot of the work we do and working with so many people that are, veterans. It just gave me, there's something else that registered is, minus the fact of having the appropriate resources and or facilities and or places to get help, it's also that training of being, told that there's, when you surrender, there's a form of weakness. And I think that's why there's so many of them that struggle. And I think, again, that's a part of this is changing that narrative and to come out and to let people know there's no shame in saying that you have a problem, and there's no, there's no shame or guilt and seeking guidance and or help. And Pam, it's so phenomenal to see how you've come through all of this. You've had, and that we could go on for hours about this, right? I do want to kind of hear one of the last things around your family and how that is, because you had the young child and how that life looks like today. Yeah, children. How did that all turn out for it? Can you give us an overview on that?
Okay, the short version is this. Each of my children had their challenges with drugs and alcohol. My oldest, she disclosed, my oldest is 38. Okay. So she disclosed that she had stopped drinking. I didn't know she started. And so we had, and it goes to that isolation and shame. She's been sober maybe 5 years herself now.
Wow.
I have a middle son. Boy, I'm a mom, so I forget those ages. The youngest is 34. The oldest is 38. You guys do the math. And I laugh about that all the time. So I say that each of them had their struggles with it. I think their resiliency factor was that they saw me come out on the other side of it. And so I'm just hoping that's what it was. But with them, they turned out extremely well, really good professionals. They all got a degree, and that's a really good thing. But the family, it was literally a family disease.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it was is all three of them? Are they in? Do you have two or three?
I have 3 children. My oldest is the daughter. But I think she's younger than that. We laugh about it all the time. Each year I ask her how old she is, and she's like, I get this every year from you, Mama. So anyway.
No, but did all 3, are they all in recovery now?
Apparently so, because they confessed that they struggled and they kept it from me. They really did. Yes, it was pretty bad. I didn't know. I can honestly say this without identifying them. They shared that their addictions was bad.
So did you ever think, though, that going through all that, going back to your childhood, dream of wanting to help people, did you ever think you'd land at being a clinical director?
No, not at all. Not at all. I'm glad I have the chops for it. But
right.
Yeah.
How did you end up becoming, involved in the treatment field and getting to where you are today, this amazing woman that you are and what you do?
Wow. When I was saying earlier that I just had this burden for humans, and I really did. Not until after I started my master's program in mental health, that this addiction thing kept gnawing at me. So I just kept moving towards addiction and recovery because I knew the mental health piece like the back of my hand. Mm-hmm. So the addiction piece was the personal and the family experience. Mm-hmm. And so when I finally found that that was the marriage for me as far as my career, it just took off. I was in my element. I am readily available to counsel on a drop. It's a part of me. I don't feel like this is a job. And I just love this community. That's it.
Well, I think, Pam, one of the most phenomenal things is to see how balanced you are. There's, again, as we all have our days, there are ups and downs and stuff like that. But ever since I met you and connected with you, but through the stories and through what you've gone through, it's just amazing to see how even keeled things are. And it's a sense of you're very, very approachable, and it's just a very, you can tell that you've done the work, is what I'm getting at, because it's just you're so fluid with what you're doing, and just so grateful for what you do. And it's amazing to see how this has all come to fruition for you. Because for me, I never knew how I was going to end up in this space and working and helping people in addiction. I was sponsored and being paid for by alcohol companies. The last thing in the world and that I ever thought I would do was this. But it's a lot of our greatest, messes become our message, and that's what you've been able to do today. And it's very, very empowering. Tell us real quick, though, about Oakvine, and if people would like to find out more, where can they go?
Well, if they just log into oakvine.com, oakvinerecoverycenter.com, they can find out a lot about our program. We are so proud to be able to provide eclectic services, mentors, spiritual guidance, different forms of groups that supports a choice. Let's put it that way. We are excited because it's not a one size fit all, and I our programming is more of supporting in the lifestyle that they want and helping them foster that place called there. We do traditional groups, but with a little spin on it. Again, because we really care about what's happening, and not that other treatment centers do not, but our investment shows that we value their humanity. They can go to the website and they can look at the things that we offer. But the biggest thing I say that we can offer is a lot of dignity and respect. And we're always extending our hand and going the distance, because we know how it felt when we were going through. So that's the big deal with Oakvine Recovery. It's true. It's true. It's just not a building with a sign on it.
No, for sure.
My heart sings for joy with the woman that you have pulled yourself up by the bootstraps. You know, you by the God bootstraps, and you have achieved great things. I mean, you have done amazing things, and I know that our listeners are so honored to hear you today. If you were to give our listeners one action for the day, what would it be?
Own your hope.
Ooh.
Take ownership of your hope.
I love that.
I cannot wait to meet you. I cannot wait to meet. I want to hug your neck. You have the kindest eyes, the kindest face. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's it. And you'll get there. You'll get there. And I just want to, and Hilary, thank you so much. I'm just very impressed with your presentation as well.
Thank you.
And I can see your authenticity. I really can. You know what, Jason, you know I'm your biggest fan. So whoever that biggest fan is, tell them that they are deposed.
100%.
I have a lot of respect for you. And here in Austin, we like you just because you're you. And if we never knew that you were on television, we'd treat you the same. We would embrace you the same. And because this is Texas and we dig everybody, you would still get that red carpet. We love you treatment. So always know that, in Texas and Austin, we just like the person, and you rated real high when you left. So I needed to let you know that we like you just because you're you, and that's it. That's it. And that's all you need with Texas.
Well, Texas saved my life. This is where I got sober. Colorado tried, but Texas succeeded, baby.
Yeah. We just like you because we like you.
That means a lot. And again, is it's incredible to see the work that Oakvine is doing. There's a lot of great treatment centers out in Texas, but there's something that they need more of is the aftercare. It's not hard to get sober; it's hard to stay sober. So I love the work that's being done out there. It's super important. Pamm, I mean, obviously, we're going to be in a lot more communication and stay in touch, and just with the work that we're doing and raising awareness. But thank you for being so open, vulnerable, and sharing your story.
Sure.
It's a true testament, and anything worth having is not easy, right? And you've paved the road in front of you, and you've done incredible work, and you're helping a lot of people today. So go check out Oakvine Recovery if you want to hear more about Pamm and or the program. We love you. We'll be in touch, and love to have you back again here soon.
Thank you, Pamm. I'm saving a hug for you, girl. A real hug.
God bless, Pamm.
Okay. God bless. Bye.